Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Sea Tranquility's Rant series. I'm your host, Pete Pardo. Today is Sunday, July the 22nd. We're finally here. This is the one I've been talking about for a couple of weeks. This is the No Sophomore Slump rant. Okay, so basically, these are bands who released very, very strong, notable debut albums, and then came back either shortly thereafter, or a couple years thereafter, or maybe many years thereafter, with a follow-up, a sophomore album that was possibly as good, if not better, than the debut. So obviously there's a lot of these, and this, of course, this is totally subjective. So you may think some of these are nowhere near as good as the debut. You may think the debuts of some of these were not good. I personally think that most of these bands we're talking about here had very, very good debuts, but they really knocked it out of the park on the follow-up. So I've got a huge stack here. You're obviously going to see me talk about these, hear me talk about these, and you're going to be like, oh, but he forgot this, and he forgot that, and he forgot that. I couldn't do everything, folks. I tried to put together as much as I could without being ridiculous. We didn't want an hour-long show here. So let me just dive in. Again, like we've done with some of these in the past, I'm not going to do these in any real order. And I'm not going to get into tons of specifics about each one of them. But again, these are sophomore albums by either some newer, some classic band, what have you, that are very notable. If you haven't checked them out, please do. But these are some that I really like a lot. So I'm just going to go off the top of the stack here. So the first one I have here, it's a favorite of mine. So this particular guy, this guitar player, made a name for himself in Procol Harum in the late 60s. Of course, then he went solo and started a recording career that still continues to this day. He's a much beloved blues rock guitar legend. His name is Robin Trower. His debut, Twice Removed from Yesterday, was a very, very good debut, solo debut for him, but he followed that up shortly thereafter with probably his signature album of all time, called Bridge of Sighs. This is a twofer here. This is the album we're talking about. Of course, it's got the title track, Day of the Eagle, Foolin' Me, Two Rolling Stones, Lady Love, Little Bit of Sympathy, all classic songs for Robin Trower. One of the most beloved guitar-oriented albums of all time from the early 70s. Next, this predates that, so we're going back to the 60s. Probably the first supergroup of all time, hard rock supergroup, blues rock supergroup. Of course, I'm talking about Cream, Disraeli Gears. They followed up Fresh Cream with this wonderful slab of sounds that at that point most people hadn't heard before. What's on here? Of course, Strange Brew, Sunshine of Your Love. Oh, what else? Tales of Brave Ulysses, Swallober, however they say that. It's a great tune. Outside Woman Blues, Take It Back, Mother's Lament, all sorts of great songs. Jack Bruce, Eric Clapton, Ginger Baker. One of the best power trios of all time. A classic sophomore album. Perhaps one of the best sophomore releases ever. This is obviously a legendary album by a legendary guy. Axis Bold as Love from the Jimi Hendrix Experience. That debut album is legendary for a reason. Top to bottom, it's just great songs. For some people, including myself, a lot of those songs are pretty played out, which is why I always reach for this and his third album, Electric Ladyland, more than I do Are You Experienced. But just look what's on here. Up from the Sky, Spanish Castle Magic, Wait Until Tomorrow, Little Wing, If Six Was Nine, Castles Made of Sand, Little Miss Lover, Bold as Love. Some great tunes on here. This is Jimmy really getting into kind of the psychedelia and just a fantastic album from the late 60s. Just kind of personifies that whole era. All right, this one, I believe this was 1969, if I'm not mistaken. Love this album to death. We talked about their debut on our Best Debut show. I think this album, as strong as that one was, this, I think, blows it out of the water, which is a perfect fit for this show. Grand Funk Railroad's Grand Funk, or as some people call it, the Red Album. What do we got on here? Got This Thing on the Move. What? You can't get much more of a kick-ass opener than that, folks. I'm telling you. What else here? Please Don't Worry. Highfalutin Woman. Mr. Limousine Driver. In Need. What a great tune. Paranoid. Not to be confused with the Sabbath song. I'd rather hear this Paranoid any day over Sabbath's Paranoid, which I've heard a million times in my life. Never need to hear again. Don't doubt that it's a classic. And then, of course, the epic Inside Looking Out. Just a great, raucous, raw, heavy rock album. Such an underrated band in kind of the history of like hard rock and early proto-metal. All right, we're going to fast forward here to the 90s. So we got Government Mule's Dos. Their follow-up to their great debut. A great, great sophomore album. Blind Man in the Dark, Thorazine Shuffle, Thelonious Beck, what other? Birth of the Mule, John the Revelator, She Said, Raven Black Knight. Just classic Government Mule tunes. Another, probably one of the best power trios of the 90s. Seriously, you know, like the kind of second coming of Cream and Free, Humble Pie, that sort of thing. Although those last two bands I mentioned were not power trios, but still, you get the picture. Okay, so I didn't include this band in our best debuts, and there's a kind of a reason why I didn't. Because this band first released an EP in the early 80s, which everybody loves. Everybody loved back in the day. A lot of people kind of call that their debut, but because it's an EP, does it really qualify? I don't know. So I kind of didn't include them in that, but I felt I wanted to make mention of them here because they should be on one of these shows. So let's say that Queensryche's debut EP qualifies as a debut. It's a kick-ass one. So that means that their No Sophomore Slump release would be Warning, which is a great, great album. Classic Queensryche album. But if the EP doesn't qualify, then this would have been their debut, and that Rage for Order would be their kick-ass follow-up sophomore album release. Either way you look at it, these are both great albums, deserving of either best debut, best sophomore release. Okay, so we want to give Queensryche some love because they deserve it. Great, no matter how you look at it. Okay, so this one is going to be iffy for some people. But again, it's my show, my opinion, so I can do what I want here. Kiss released their self-titled debut. It's a landmark debut. It's one of the best of all time, right? Their next album didn't sell as well. In the eyes of a lot of people, not quite as good. I personally love Hotter Than Hell. For me, this is... I listen to this way more than the debut. I'll tell you why. It's not that I think the songs on the debut obviously are better, more legendary, but I felt back in the day, I still feel today, that those classic tunes from Kiss's debut sound better on the Kiss Alive album. And I love this album. This album is darker. It's a little, I don't know, it's a little heavier. You know, just some great, and the classics on here, you know, Got to Choose, Parasite, Hotter Than Hell, the title track, Going Blind, you know, just Strange Ways, just some great tunes on here. And personally, I think that there's no slump in here. For me, this is as strong as their debut. You heard it there, folks. Just my opinion, of course. All right, here's an example of a sophomore release that I think betters an excellent debut. I'm talking for Song for America from Kansas. Oh man, this is such a great album. Such a great album. The title track, Song for America, Lamplight Symphony, Lonely Street, The Devil Game, Incomudro, Hymn to the Atman, of course, and Down the Road. Just classic U.S. hard rock and progressive rock. Amazing. As much as I love the debut, this is the real deal. Love it, love it, love it. Okay, so we all know that King Diamond released the Fatal Portrait album, his first solo album after he left Merciful Fate that first time around. Great album, but then of course he comes back with this Abigail concept album. He's famous for doing these crazy horror concept albums. This is kick-ass. Most people, this or the one that follows them are most people's favorites King Diamond albums, and can't really argue too much with that. Great, great, great stuff from King Diamond and company. Okay, Steely Dan. Okay, Countdown to Ecstasy. Their first album was pretty strong. Okay, very notable. Couple hits, couple radio hits, but it was here that this band, I think, really came together. Bodhisattva, the Boston Rag, Showbiz Kids, My Old School. Classic tunes right there. Jazz, rock, and pop at its best. Lovely, lovely album. Okay. This is another example of a sophomore release that completely blows a very, very strong debut out of the water. I'm speaking of Death Walks Behind You from the mighty Atomic Rooster. This is just a band that's like really, really hard to kind of classify. They were part hard rock, total parts prog, but they were also kind of they had this gothic doom vibe, especially on their first two albums, especially on this album. You know, what do you got here? The title track, which is a great mix of doom and prog. Vug, Tomorrow Night, 7th Street, Sleeping for Years, I Can't Take No More, Nobody Else, and Gershatzer. Amazing guitar, Hammond organ, drums interplay. Just incredible band, incredible album. This is like one of the unsung heavy albums in rock and roll history, folks. If you've never listened to Death Walks Behind You by Atomic Rooster, stop watching this video. Go to Amazon or wherever it is you buy your CDs or LPs or whatever and order this. Okay? Trust me. You'll love it. It's that good. Okay. After the final experiment comes Into the Electric Castle, sophomore release extraordinaire from Arion, the kind of rock opera, supergroup, multi-personnel, progressive metal and rock project from Anders Lucassen, with all sorts of cool people. Damian Wilson, Fish, Annika van Giersbergen. All sorts of folks on this. This also blows away the debut, which was very fine too. This is an awesome, awesome concept album that needs to be heard if you have it. All right, going back to the mid-'70s. So these guys get signed to Swan Song Records, Supergroup. Paul Rogers, you know the guys, Bad Company. A whole bunch of half guys from Free, guys from Mott the Hoople, bassist, singer from King Crimson. Of course, Rogers becomes the lead singer and vocal god once this band forms. I'm talking about Straight Shooter from Bad Company. They released a killer self-titled debut, but I personally think this one might be a little bit better. It's a little more rockin'. Maybe it doesn't get the love of the debut, but, you know, Good Lovin' Gone Bad, Feel Like Making Love, Shooting Star, Deal with the Preacher, right? Those are great tunes right there. Kick ass. Love this album. Quite good. All right. I don't know if we mentioned these guys in the last one, in the best debuts, but I should have. Bachman Turner Overdrive, heavy rock band from Canada, released their self-titled album, which was quite good. Had tunes like Gimme Your Money Please, Blue Collar, Stayed Awake All Night, a couple other really good tunes, but you know what? They cranked out BTO2 shortly thereafter, and that was monumental. What's on here? Welcome Home, Stone Gates, Let It Ride, I Don't Have to Hide, Taking Care of Business, Give It Time. Great tune. That's it right there, folks. Heavy, heavy stuff. Underrated heavy rock band of the 70s. I mean, seriously. Gotta wet my whistle here. Got a lot of stuff to cover here. All right. I don't think we mentioned these guys in the debut. Should have. Badlands, self-titled debut, late 80s. Great debut. Killer debut. Another sort of super band, Jakey Lee and Company. They released a follow-up shortly thereafter called Voodoo Highway. Like this a lot. Okay, Ray Gillen, may he rest in peace. What a singer. Great guitar work. The Last Time, Shine On, Whiskey Dust, Soul Stealer, 3-Day Funk, Silver Horses, Voodoo Highway, Fire and Rain cover tune, Heaven's Train, Love Don't Mean a Thing. Great. Late 80s, early 90s, bluesy, heavy rock. Dig it. Wish that band stayed around a little bit longer than they did. Okay, another band that we didn't mention in the best debuts, Black Country Communion. This is more recent stuff. Supergroup, Glenn Hughes, Joe Bonamassa, Jason Bonham, Derek Sherinian. Killer band. Guys coming together. They've got roots in hard rock and metal and blues and funk and progressive rock come together for this great mixing of all classic sounds. It's something that's still pretty modern. Their debut was awesome. They came back with Black Country Communion BCC 2, awesome. Man in the Middle, Battle for Hadrian's Wall, Smokestack Woman, Faithless, An Ordinary Son, Little Secret, Crossfire, Cold, The Outsider. Love these guys. Love them, love them, love them. Okay, so this would never happen today. But back in the late 60s, early 70s, you had a band who decided that their like first 3 studio albums were going to be double albums. What band in their right mind would do something so fucking ridiculous in 2018, right? Would not happen. But back in 1969, or 68, 69, 70, 71, a band from Chicago called Chicago, originally called the Chicago Transit Authority, said, screw the music industry and everybody else. This is what we're going to do. So they put out Chicago Transit Authority, Chicago 2, and Chicago 3, all double albums, 4 sides of vinyl. Epic stuff, mix of pop and rock and jazz and funk and fusion, a little prog, and Chicago 2, arguably, the Chicago Transit Authority album debut is incredible for a lot of different reasons. So is this, though. I don't know if it bests it. I don't know. But it's as good in slightly different ways. Of course, it's got 25 or 6-4 and all sorts of cool little mini suites and awesome, color my world. I'm sitting here just looking for stuff to mention here. It's just too good. It doesn't even, mentioning all the songs doesn't even give it justice. Killer vocals. They had a couple different vocalists in the band. Horns, of course. Horns and reeds, amazing. Terry Kath on guitars. Cool keyboards, piano, Hammond organ, electric piano. Just amazing arrangements, amazing tunes. This is the Steven Wilson remix from a year or so ago. Incredible. Just an amazing album. A sophomore album that just lives up to the billing of the first album and kind of takes the band like in different avenues. Just great. One way or another, my boys in Cactus. Love this stuff. I like this better than the debut, actually. Debut is very cool. This is great. Long Tall Sally. The title track is my favorite Cactus song of all time. Hometown Bust. Feel So Bad. Big Mama Boogie. Rock and Roll Children. Great bluesy, heavy rock and boogie. Gotta love it. Okay, all the way from Europe. The Welshman. Budgie. Self-titled debut. Killer debut, early proto-metal at its finest, an unsung band in the history of heavy music. They followed it up shortly thereafter with Squawk, which I think is even better. Got that Roger Dean artwork there. What do we got on here? Whiskey River, Rockin' Man, Make Me Happy. All sorts of great tunes. Stranded, Young as a World. I love that tune. This great. Their heavy songs are so freaking heavy. Their lighter songs are like kind of bluesy, jazzy, okay, slightly folky. Then they come back, hit you over the head with these like heavy, like almost Sabbath type riffs. I know I've said this so many times. If you haven't discovered Budgie yet, and you haven't gotten sick of me pressing them on you all these months and years, just give in and do it. All right. Man, classic stuff. All right. We got a lot to cover. Let's just motor through this. Okay. Blue Oyster Cult. Very fine debut. I still think. But Tyranny and Mutation, man, knocked it out of the park. An amazing sophomore album that even bests a very good debut. The Red and the Black. Hot Rails to Hell. 7 Screaming Disbusters. I mean, come on. What else? Team Archer, Mistress of the Solomon Salt, OD'd on Life Itself. Great. Another band that just kind of like took like hard rock and psychedelia and made it into something completely different. All right, this might be one of the best sophomore albums of all time. It followed a legendary debut, one of the most important debuts of all time. Of course, I'm talking about Paranoid by Black Sabbath. For a lot of us Sabbath fans, and even casual Sabbath fans, we may not listen to this album as much anymore because we grew up on it, we listened to it to death, and for some of us, we never need to hear Paranoid, Iron Man, War Pigs ever again. But you know what? You still got Electric Funeral, Hand of Doom, Fairies Wear Boots, The Cool Planet Caravan. Still, it's classic for a reason, all right? I don't need to say much more about that. It is what it is. All right. New wave of British heavy metal legends burst on the scene at the start of the 80s with their self-titled debut. It's a fine debut. It's a great debut. But man, Killers came out and killed it. Another one of the best sophomore follow-ups to a fine debut ever. Ides of March, Wrathchild, Murders in the Rue Morgue, Another Life, Genghis Khan, Innocent Exile, Killers, Twilight Zone, Prodigal Son, Purgatory, and Drifter. It doesn't get much better than that, right? Also their last studio album with Paul Di'Anno before, of course, Mr. Dickinson comes in. Takes things even further on their next album, right? Okay, so I don't believe we mentioned this band's debut on the Best Debut show. Kind of having a bunch of those pop up here today, but it's a very fine one, very good. May not fit into that killer debut mode, which I think is what we were going for on that. But I do want to give them a shout out here because I think it is very solid. But I think they really knocked it out of the park on their follow up one. Talking about Jethro Tull, Stand Up. They're just finally starting to come into their own here. This was more of like a pretty standard blues rock album, and a very good one at that. But here's where the kind of folky stuff started to come in. It's still bluesy a bit, but there's also that hard rock poking in as well, and you can kind of see the seeds laying for some of the prog that was going to happen just a year or two later. So, what do we got? A New Day Yesterday, Jeffrey Goes to Leicester Square, Boré, Back to the Family, Look into the Sun, Nothing is Easy, Fat Man, We Used to Know, Reasons for Waiting, and of course, For a Thousand Mothers. And if you get the deluxe, you get all sorts of cool stuff on here, as well as a Steven Wilson remix, right? Is this the Steven Wilson remix? I don't remember. I think it is. Anyway, story for another day. Okay, we did talk about Gentle Giant on that last show. Their self-titled debuts. Damn good. Damn good. Hinted at what was to come, and what was to come surfaced big time on Acquiring the Taste. This is a complex, weird, but wonderful album. A progressive rock band like the world had never heard before. Most people probably, the debut is a little more straightforward, okay? Most people probably heard this for the first time and were saying, what the hell am I hearing here? These guys were from another planet. One of the greatest bands of all time. Musically, just all off the charts in all different directions. They could do it all, every style. Their songs are just dense and light and airy and rockin' and complex and beautiful, all at the same time. Pentagruel's Nativity, Edge of Twilight, The House, The Street, The Room, Acquiring the Taste, Wreck, The Moon is Down, Black Cat, and Plain Truth. Awesome stuff. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Another band we mentioned on their best debut. Love their self-titled album. It's awesome. These guys are from Texas. If you dig like Deep Purple and mixed with Grand Funk Railroad, there's no way you can't like these guys. Blood Rock 2, arguably better than that debut. It's close. It's close. Both fantastic. What do we got on here? The Rockin', Lucky in the Morning, Cheater, Sable and Pearl, Fallen, Children's Heritage, Dear Not a Lover, DOA. That was a big hit. DOA. Again, I don't know how much of a big hit. It was kind of like an underground AM thing you'd hear played on the radio late at night. It's a spooky ass tune, kind of a little bit Iron Butterfly-ish. Very, very cool. And Fancy Space Odyssey. Lots of great lead guitar work, a lot of great riffs, great vocals, great Hammond organ. Really good album, really good band, very underrated band. All right, what else? What else we got here? Uriah Heep. Very heavy, very humble. We talked about on the Greatest Debuts album show. It's great. I think Salisbury, that followed it, it's just as good. May not be better. Okay, it's arguable. That debut is mighty, mighty fine. But this is awesome. Bird of Prey, The Park, Time to Live, Lady in Black. It's got Lady in Black on it. It's got to be on this show, right? High Priestess, a great heavy rocker. And, of course, the epic title track, the band's first kind of foray into full-blown progressive rock. Just some great tunes. Most of this is pretty freaking heavy, kind of proggy. Yeah, I dig it with that awesome, weird cover. A great sophomore release. Stevie Ray Vaughan, Double Trouble, Texas Flood was, of course, a dynamite debut. They followed it up with Couldn't Stand the Weather shortly thereafter. Another great album. Maybe a little bit more mainstream sounding, slightly. Not as straight blues as that first one, but awesome still. Title track is great. There's, of course, Hendrix's Voodoo Child on here. Cold Shot was a big hit. Tin Pan Alley, great blues tune. What else we got here? Scuttle Button. Things that I used to do. Great album. Great talent. Miss him. Leonard Skinner followed up that fantastic debut with Second Helping. We all know all the classics on here. Don't need to mention it. A staple of Southern rock. As good, if not better than that debut. Yeah, that debut is pretty damn good. But this is awesome. Awesome, too. Catch them on tour right now. They're going away, and it's their farewell. Okay, here's another example of an album that I think really eclipses the debut. You know, most people, when they talk of Yngwie Malmsteen, Swedish guitar virtuoso, they talk about, you know, that's first solo album of his, or the first band album. You call it solo album. It's Yngwie Malmsteen's Rising Force. Mostly instrumental, a couple tunes sung by Jeff Scott Soto, but most people are like, oh my God, incredible, incredible guitar instrumentals on there. And that's true. Hold on. But I personally love Marching Out way more. This is like truly comes across as a band album. Just, I think 2 instrumentals on here. The rest are just really good heavy rock tunes, kind of rainbowish, sort of, with wonderful guitar work. I mean, you know, I am a Viking. I'll see the light tonight. Don't let it end. Disciples of Hell, Anguish and Fear, On the Run Again, Caught in the Middle. Dig this album. I played this to death back in the day. An awesome sophomore album. Script for a Jester's Tear by Marillion. Awesome debut. Fugazi follows it up. I would say equally as good. It's up for debate which one's better, but man, Assassin, Punch and Judy, Jigsaw, Emerald Lies, She Chameleon, Incubus, and the title track. Pretty fucking close, right? Fugazi or Script? Which do you prefer? How do you rate them? Equally as good. I always look at both those albums equally. Equally great albums. Both eclipsed by the 2 that came after it. But these are, obviously, this is, you know, the early days of the band. But great, great 1-2 punch right out of the gate from Marillion. All right. I didn't mention Megadeth's debut in the last episode. Probably should have. It gets a little flack sometimes because it's a little rough around the edges, very raw. Killing is my business and business is good. But I think it's damn good for what it is. But they followed it up with something that I think blows it out of the water. And it's one of my favorite sophomore albums by anybody ever. Peace Sells, but Who's Buying? Again, you know, when you got Wake Up Dead and The Conjuring, the title track, Devil's Island, Black Friday, Bad Omen, My Last Words, and a killer version of I Ain't Superstitious. Kind of hard not to talk about it on a show like this, right? A amazing thrash sophomore release. Back to Southern rock. Molly Hatchet, first self-titled album is great. It's great. But then they released this. Flirt with Disaster, folks. This is awesome. I think what I talked about in the debut episode, that, you know, with the plane crash, Lynyrd Skinner plane crash, and the band kind of basically splintering at that point, Southern rock, and rock in general, was looking for another Southern band to kind of step in and take up the helm. And I really believe that Molly Hatchet did a great job of that for a bunch of years, especially with this album. You know, Whiskey Man, It's All Over Now, Jukin' City, Boogie No More. The title track is, of course, legendary. What else? Good Rockin', Gunsmoke, Long Time, Let the Good Times Roll. Yeah, really good album. Okay. Merciful Fates. Melissa. One of the best debuts ever. We talked about it in that last episode, didn't we? Yep. Don't Break the Oath was their follow-up. Arguable which one I like better. They're both really damn good. Again, this is one of those instances where either one you can't go wrong with. Okay? I know a lot of people lean towards Melissa a little bit. I get that. But this ranks right up there. This is the evil album. I remember the first time, when I was a kid, I bought this before I got Melissa. And I remember listening to this and thinking, holy shit. There is some evil shit going on this record. I mean, King Diamond, you never heard anything like that before. Never. Ever. I forgot to grab Celtic Frost. They should be on here as well. Anyway. I digress. I'm going to remember stuff here that I'm forgetting. All right, Kill 'Em All, we talked about in that last episode. Deservedly so. I think Ride the Lightning blows it out of the water. This is probably my favorite Metallica album. Top to bottom is just great. Fight Fire with Fire, the title track, For Whom the Bell Tolls, Fade to Black, Trapped Under Ice, Escape, Creeping Death, Call of Cthulhu. I mean, come on. That is just quintessential early 80s thrash, folks. All right, going way back, Santana. Their first self-titled debut was immense, unbelievable. I think they beat it with the Broxus, folks. San Francisco Latino rock, man, you can't go wrong. Black Magic Woman, Gypsy Queen, Oyo Como Va, Incident, and Neshaber. Neshaber? Never know how they say that. Sayakabo, Mother's Daughter, Samba Pati, Hope You're Feeling Better. Great. Atheist, Unquestionable Presence. Florida's Technical Death Metal Masters. Their debut was awesome. This is even better. This is complex, intricate, progressive death metal at its finest with bits of jazz fusion. These guys were so far ahead of the curve, it's not even funny. Their first three albums are just... The debut was really good, but man, the second and third albums knocked it out of the park. This is awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Gotta mention it. Black Metal. Their Welcome to Hell debut was quite good. Black Metal. Did I say Black? No, I meant to say Venom. Venom's debut, Welcome to Hell, was killer. Black Metal, way better. Classic, classic album of early extreme metal. Okay. Awesome stuff. Jumping over to Sweden, progressive rock. The Flower Kings, Retropolis. Another killer sophomore release that I think is better than the debut. A lot of cool, lengthy tunes. Symphonic prog, Royna Stolten Company. Yeah. All right. And that last episode I talked about Sabotage and Sirens. Well, how about the Dungeons Are Calling? I remember I bought those both at the same time, and I was like, man, one's like a continuation of the other. Heavy. It's amazing how heavy early Sabotage is. Sirens, Dungeons Are Calling, Power of the Night, and the Hall of the Mountain King. Those first like five, six Sabotage albums. Woo! Smoking. Okay, probably for me, it's debatable, but definitely top 5 sophomore releases of all time. This band's debut was excellent, excellent, but man, it only hinted at what was to come on the next release. I probably don't need to say anything here, right? Ronnie James Dio, Richie Blackmore, Cozy Powell, Jimmy Bain, Tony Carey. Tarot Woman, Run with the Wolf, Starstruck, Do You Close Your Eyes, Stargazer, and Light in the Black. One of my favorite albums of all time. Probably, like I said, one of the top 5 sophomore releases ever. And an album that completely killed a great debut. Okay, if there's a perfect example for what we're trying to get at today, this is it, right? All right, Fly By Night took the seeds from that first bulldozing Rush album, and all of a sudden the sci-fi lyrics, Neil joins the band, the sci-fi lyrics, fantasy lyrics are starting to peek in all of a sudden. The band cranks up the metallic guitar work. Anthem, Best I Can, Beneath, Between, and Behind, By Tor and the Snow Dog, Fly By Night, Making Memories, Rivendell, and In the End. Powerhouse album by a powerhouse band. All right, I felt I had to kind of include this one here, just because, even though I didn't talk about their debut on the first album, on the first episode, a bunch of you kind of said, well, hey, what about Lonesome Crow by the Scorpions? Yeah, pretty good. Maybe not a amazing debut. Maybe not a legendary debut, but a very good one, yes. They followed that up with a lineup change. Michael Schenker left to join UFO. Uli John Roth popped in. Right there, Fly to the Rainbow. Killer sophomore album. This is actually a little collection. It's got like, Fly to the Rainbow and In Trance and Virgin Killer on it. Anyway, all in one set. Awesome stuff. But yeah, Fly to the Rainbow. Definitely good. Definitely good. Wishbone Ash, Pilgrimage, follows up their awesome self-titled debut. Yeah, it's pretty close. They're both really good. Was Dis, The Pilgrim, Jailbait, Alone, Lullaby, Valediction, Where Were You Tomorrow? Yeah, pretty damn strong. Kind of like the debut a little better, but still, it's right up there. Ozzy's Diary of a Madman. I like this better than the Blizzard of Oz album. Classics top to bottom. This is another good example. I think this really improved on the debut, which is stellar as well. So all sorts of great stuff on here. Over the Mountain, Flying High Again, You Can't Go Rock and Roll, Believer, Little Dolls Tonight, SATO, Diary of a Madman. Come on. That's, you know. All right, we're winding down, folks. We're at the 35-minute mark. Epic show. Hell Awaits by Slayer. But of course, I still like the debut a little bit better. It's just me. I love Show No Mercy. But man, for a lot of people, this was the shit. Okay, and then of course we know what they follow this up with. But Hell Awaits, man, this is extreme shit for the time. Dig it, dig it. AC/DC, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. A lot of people love. This is a lot of people's favorite AC/DC album. I kind of prefer the debut, but you know what? It's close. It's close. Big Balls, Problem Child, title track, Love at First Feel, Ride On. You know, it's classic for a reason. Foreigner, Double Vision. Again, your mileage may vary. That debut is really damn strong. But, you know, what do we got here? Hot Blooded, Blue Morning, Blue Day. What else? Love Has Taken Its Toll, Double Vision. I've Waited So Long, Lonely Children, Spellbinder. Yeah, pretty damn good. I like the debut better, personally. But I think this is strong enough to qualify here. And it was a big-time seller. Man, those first three Foreigner albums sold a shitload of copies, didn't they? Exodus, Fabulous Disaster, followed up Bonded by Blood. I got to be honest with you, okay? I know a lot of you are going to be hurling vegetables at me and stuff like that. I know Bonded by Blood is looked at by many as a legendary, fantastic thrash debut, and it is. For whatever reason, don't shoot me, I never warmed up to the vocals of Paul Bailoff. For whatever reason. And when Zetro joined the band, I just really dug. I just thought the production was better on here, obviously. The songs are great on here. You know, The Last Act of Defiance, Fabulous Disaster, The Toxic Waltz, Cage in Hell, Like Father, Like Son, Open Season. It's just a great, great album. And I like it better than Bonded by Blood. I know, I may be in the minority there. Because I know Bonded by Blood is a beloved album. Okay? Whatever. Okay? I'm including it. So, ELP, this was a tricky one here. So I talked about the debut from them on the other show. Technically, what I'm going to show you now is not their sophomore release, but their sophomore release, Pictures at an Exhibition, was basically a live album. So you know what? I'm not going to count it. So their sophomore release, their sophomore all-studio album of new material was Tarkus. And you know what? Tarkus is a freaking great album. A great album. You got the whole, you know, epic title suite. Bitches Crystal, Infinite Space, A Time and a Place, Are You Ready, Eddie, Jeremy Bender. I mean, come on. For the title track alone, the epic title track alone, got to have this here. So, if you're going to insist that Exhibition is the sophomore album, okay. I like Pictures and Exhibition, fine and dandy, but not as much as their self-titled debut. This, on the other hand, different story. So, Ekelin, U.S. progressive rock band. Veterans, God, they've been around for so long. Their debut was awesome, but man, As the World, they got signed to a major label. They killed it with this album. A legendary early 90s progressive rock album that not enough people know about. They got signed by, Sony, I believe it was, and then ceremoniously dropped shortly thereafter, which was a shame because I think they could have taken these guys to the top. A fantastic album. Wonderful, quirky, progressive rock. If you love like classic Gentle Giant, mixed with a bit of pop, there's no way you can't like this. Amazing vocal harmonies and musical interplay. Just a great, great album and band. Queen. Queen 1, classic debut. Queen 2, underrated as hell. Again, it might not be as strong through and through, okay? But I had to include it here because it's just so great and so underrated. Father to Son, White Queen, Loser in the End, the heavy Ogre Battle. It's worth it for that alone. Nevermore, the March of the Black Queen, which is one of my favorite Queen tunes of all time. It's just awesome. Funny How Love Is, Seven Seas of Rye. I mean, come on. This is a great sophomore album. Really, really great. Does it best the debut? It's damn close. I don't know. Hard to say. Dio's The Last in Line. Again, this one's too close to tell. Holy Diver for many is like one of the greatest debuts of all time, and rightfully so. I love it to death. This might not be quite as strong, but again, for some people it might be. It's just so close I had to include it here. We Rock, the title track. I Speed at Night, One Night in the City, Evil Eyes, Mystery, Eat Your Heart Out, and of course, Egypt, The Chains Are On. Great stuff. Again, I'm including it here. I don't think it's as strong as a debut. So it really kind of goes against what I'm trying to talk about here, but we're going to leave it anyway. Okay. Strange Days by The Doors. Another one that's probably borderline because that debut is fantastic. But you know what? For a lot of people, a lot of those tunes on the debut are pretty played out. Or in the almost 50 years, actually about 50 years since it was released. I think there's a lot of really great tunes on here. And this was The Doors at their adventurous best, really throwing in the psychedelic stuff. I think this is a hugely underrated album that, quite frankly, I listen more today than I listened to The Doors debut. So I'm going to include it here because right now where I'm at today in 2018, I like this better than the debut. Maybe historically speaking, not. But I just think it's a hugely underrated album and deserving of discussion here. All right, here's one. So I somehow, again, we always talk about you can't fit everything on these shows. So I didn't talk about Dream Theaters when Dream and Day Unite on our debut, on our best debut show, because quite frankly, it's a very solid album. But when you look at the rest of the catalog, it's kind of like often forgotten about, but it is very good on its own. Really is. But man, when these guys came out with a new singer, just like a year and a half, 2 years later, Images and Words, this basically spearheaded an entire progressive metal generation in the 90s that continues to this day. It's just an absolute monolithic classic album that, I can't remember in the last couple decades a band that's had more copycat bands than Dream Theater. Everybody was then trying to do this sort of thing. Pull Me Under, Another Day, Take the Time, Surrounded, Metropolis Part 1. We know where that eventually went, right? Under a Glass Moon, Wait for Sleep, and Learning to Live. Just top to bottom classics. A debut that blew a sophomore release that blew a very fine debut completely out of the water. Another one. Actually, their debut was very, very good. Very solid. We're talking about March of the Saint by Armand Saint. Delirious Nomad. When I was a kid growing up, I was big into these guys. I like this one better. I listen to them now, and I really see how great that March of the Saint is. But I felt that this album was heavier, had better production. So what do you got on here? Long Before I Die, Nervous Man, Over the Edge, The Laugh, Conqueror, For the Sake of Heaviness, Aftermath, In the Hole, You're Never Alone, Released. That's a pretty fucking strong album. Heavy album. I dig Delirious Nomad. Great, great sophomore album. Okay, I didn't talk about these guys in the last episode. Probably forgot to. They had a very fine debut. But they followed up with, and I pulled the damn wrong CD. Anyway, I wanted to show Dirt by Alice in Chains. This obviously is not Dirt. Pulled the wrong one. Dirt, far superior album than their debut. And a really, probably for me, my favorite album released during that kind of Seattle scene. All right, which I'm not a big fan of. But I really dig that Dirt album. It's just awesome. Great, great album. It's dark. It's kind of evil. It's heavy. It's just, for the time, it was just pretty mind-boggling. And another one of those great sophomore releases, one of the better ones of all time. So, sorry I pulled the wrong one there, but it happens. Aerosmith's Get Your Wings. Fine debut they had. Okay, very fine. I included on that best debut show. But man, this one's got Same Old Song and Dance, Lord of the Thighs, Woman of the World, Train Kept a Rollin', Pandora's Box. Pretty hard to argue that this is I like this better than the debut. Okay? Your mileage may vary. Another one, pretty damn close. Idlewild South by the Allman Brothers Band. That debut kicks ass. Kicks ass. So does this, though. Revival, Don't Keep Me Wondering, Midnight Rider in memory of Elizabeth Reed. If it has that song, it's got to be considered. Hoochie Coochie Man, Please Call Home and Leave My Blues at Home. I think the first album is a little harder rocking, a little bluesier. There's like elements more like kind of that rootsy Southern rock Americana thing coming in here, but still a couple tunes that are just like, you know, mind-bogglingly good. So neck and neck with that debut, I think. And here's another one. I'm going to end with this one. This is a great one. A great band. Their first two albums for me are great. I like a lot of their other albums, but I think the first two are just awesome. I don't know. I go back and forth on this. I kind of lean towards their debut a little bit because I think it's got slightly more like kind of that prog element going on, but there's still a lot of it on here. I'm talking about Hell of a Band by Angel. I think this one might be better from a kind of accessibility factor. You know, you got Feeling Right, The Fortune, which is great. Any Way You Want It, Dr. Ice, Mirrors, Feelings, Pressure Point, Chicken Soup, and Angel Theme. Just a really great band. Great keyboards, really cool guitar work, great vocals, catchy tunes. It's anthemic. It's fun. I dig. Angels should have been huge. They really weren't. They were, you know, they did well for themselves, but they were never a huge band. They were on Casablanca Records. They should have been huge like Kiss, but never quite happened. But a really, really good album. What do you call them? Pomp rock, hard rock? I don't never know what to classify these guys at. But a really, really, really strong sophomore album that, again, is probably as good as that debut. Maybe a little better. Depends. I know a lot of people think it's better. So I'm on the fence. But anyway, that's it. I know I'm missing a lot of stuff. So you may, you know, feel free to put in the comments some of your picks for sophomore releases by fairly notable bands that were better than a great debut. Remember, that's the criteria here. They had to have a pretty damn strong debut. Either a phenomenal debut or a debut that caught a lot of attention, that was, you know, really quite good. Maybe it wasn't a huge seller, but a lot of good press. Some people bought it. People still think about it as a very solid debut. But then the second album just really kind of either as good or better. I know, like I said, this is kind of subjective, but it's a fun thing to talk about anyway. So, until next time, visit us on the web at www.seeitranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're here on the mighty YouTube. We're on Twitter. And anyway, that's the show. Got lots of cool stuff coming up. Remember, Judas Priest, career retrospective, happening this week. Make sure you check out our sister channel, Comic Book Geezers. If you love vintage comic books by Marvel and DC and some independents from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, check out that show. Myself and Wild Bill, my buddy Wild Bill, we have huge comic collections. You can see them. That's mine up there. I've got many, many boxes. We just show and talk about all sorts of stuff. So, you know, we're talking about Inhumans and the Hulk, Iron Man, Spider-Man, Batman, The Flash, Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., you name it. We talk about it. So anyway, till next time. See ya. Take care.